Hello everyone, this is Professor Mirsha and I welcome you back to another video lecture based on the subject International Finance under PGDFM Semester 2 under University of Mumbai. In this video, we are going to learn about Module 3 of International Finance, and this is going to be the very first part of Module 3 video. So let us see what all we have to do in Module 3.
I hope you all have went through the first two videos which contain detailed information and topics relating to the first two modules and important topics to cover for your second semester for paper International Finance. Now in this video we are going to discuss topics relating to third module and important topics of module 3 for their exam point of view. So first let us see the syllabus. Now we have already completed module 1 and module 2 in our first two videos. Module 1 may we learn about the international monetary system, the evolution, the exchange rate regimes, euro currency and FERA and FEMA. In module 2 we learn about various factors affecting the exchange rate. Then we learned about the purchasing power parity theory and the interest rate parity theory. Now in the third module we are going to learn about the modern foreign exchange market and the forex market deals. Okay, now we'll be starting with module 3 in this video. Now module 3, there are two topics that we need to cover. Number one, it includes introduction to modern foreign exchange market. Then we're going to learn about the structure of Indian foreign market, which includes authorized dealers, money changers. Then dealing room operation we are going to learn about, and then what is the role of FEDA, or we call it as the Foreign Exchange Dealers Association of India. The second part of module 3 we are going to learn what are the various types of deals in foreign market. Okay, foreign exchange codes, bid rate, ask rate and calculation. Now this module has practical sums in it. In your semester exam you are expected that there will be at least one practical question coming out from module 3. Okay, the learning outcomes of this video are: number one, we're going to learn about foreign exchange market from a world's view. Then we're going to learn about foreign exchange market in India, then the modern foreign exchange market in India, structure of Indian foreign exchange market, dealing room operations, Foreign Exchange Dealers Association of India, types of foreign exchange transactions, foreign currency accounts, different codes, bid rate and ask rate and practical sums. And thereafter, okay, I'll give you the question bank of your third module for your exam point of view. Okay, so to start with module 3, let us first go through the world's view relating to foreign exchange market. Okay, as you know, globally operation in the foreign exchange market started in major ways after the breakdown of the Bretton Woods system in 1971, which also marked the beginning of the floating exchange rate regimes in several countries. Now this was already done in our module 1 where we went through the Bretton Woods system. Now over the years the foreign exchange market has emerged as the largest market in the world. The decade of 1990 witnessed a perceptible policy shift in many emerging markets towards reorientation of their financial market in terms of new products and instruments, development of institutional and market infrastructure, and realignment of regulatory structure consistent with the liberalized operational framework. So after 1990 there has been a lot of change in the foreign exchange market. Okay, a lot of new instruments and products have been developed and the market infrastructure has also been developed. Now let us go through the foreign exchange market in India. Now the changing contour were mirrored in a rapid expansion of foreign exchange market in terms of participants, transaction volumes, decline in transaction cost and more efficient mechanism of risk transfer. The origin of the foreign exchange market in India could be traced to the years 1978 when Bank in India were permitted to undertake intraday trade in foreign exchange. So after the year 1978, okay, there has been a lot of changes in the foreign exchange market in India in terms of participants, the volume of transaction, the cost of transaction, and the efficiency in the foreign exchange market. And all thanks can go to the banks in India, okay, which were allowed to undertake intraday trade after the year 1978. However, it was in the 1990s that the Indian foreign exchange market witnessed far-reaching changes along with the shift in the currency regime in India. So because of that, now let us see the modern foreign exchange markets in India. That is the current scenario which is present in India. Now, since the onset of liberalization, foreign exchange markets in India has experienced tremendous growth. In Feb 1992, started to make the rupee convertible, and in March 1993, a single floating exchange rate in the market of forex in India was started. The Indian foreign exchange market comprises of buyers, sellers, market mediators, and the Monetary Authority of India. The main center of foreign exchange in India is Mumbai, with other centers in all the major cities such as Kolkata, New Delhi, Chennai, Bangalore, Pondicherry, and Cochin. Now, the Foreign Exchange Dealers Association is a voluntary association that also acts as a regulatory. Now, what is this Foreign Exchange Dealer Association? In later part of the video, entire topic will be taken to understand what is Foreign Exchange Dealers Association of India. Now, all resident, whether individual or HUFs, and eligible corporate meeting FEMA criteria are eligible to trade in Forex. Okay. Now, the very first topic that we need to go through in our module 3 is the structure of Indian foreign exchange market. Now, under this topic of structure of Indian foreign exchange market, okay, we need to learn how does the Indian foreign exchange market work, who regulates it, who has the power, the authority, and the responsibility towards the forex market in India. So to understand that, okay, in our next clip, okay, we will present a graphical and a theoretical part to understand the structure of Indian foreign exchange market.
Okay, so now we are going to discuss about the structure of Indian foreign exchange market. Now, to start off with this, let us go through some important pointers first. So first, we're going to explain the structure of Indian foreign exchange market. Now, key pointers to remember in this is, first, under section 41, 46, 47 of the Foreign Exchange Management Act, of 1999, or we can either call it as FEMA, and the central government collectively provided the RBI with the power as well as the responsibility to administer the forex business. So now if you want to show it in the graphical form, we can say that FEMA, that is Foreign Exchange Management Act, along with central government, okay, along with central government, gave RBI the power and the responsibility to administer the foreign exchange transaction in the country. Now, however, RBI cannot directly transact with private entities. So now there is a problem arising here. So the FEMA Act and central government, they entrusted RBI with the powers and responsibility to take over the Indian foreign exchange market. However, RBI does not transact with private entities. Okay, now India is a huge country. Okay, so the foreign exchange in India is received or required by a large number of people, received or required by a large number of individuals, the exporters and the importers. Exporters and the importers in the country, but they are spread over huge geographical area. So we can conclude in stating that the foreign exchange is required or received by individuals, exporters and importers, which are spread over vast geographical area. So it becomes very difficult for the RBI to individually deal with such person or such individual. Though RBI has the sole authority to administer foreign exchange business in India, it actually does not deal with individuals and other private entities, and therefore it cannot undertake this function. So it is not possible for the RBI to deal with them individually. So now for this, RBI had provided some license, to certain categories of person, which are known as authorized person. So this we can show in the graphic form. FEMA along with central bank gave RBI the power. The RBI could not individually fill up and meet the individual people and entity. So it gave some licenses to some categories of person known as the authorized person. Now let us understand what do you mean by the term authorized person. Now let us understand the term authorized person. Now under this we need to remember that all transactions of an authorized person, we'll use the abbreviation as of now as of an authorized person, with the end users. Now each and every foreign exchange transaction, the end users will always be the customers. Okay, so all the transactions of authorized person with the end users are governed by the exchange control regulation provided by RBI. So whenever the authorized person deals with the customers, it has to follow the regulation provided by the RBI. Next point that you have to remember under authorized person is that authorized person are mandatorily required to comply with the directions and orders of the RBI in all foreign exchange deals. So each and every transaction that the authorized person deals with has to be according to the direction and the orders of the RBI. Next point is that authorized persons are categorized in two types. The first being as authorized dealers, and the second being the authorized money changers. So let's incorporate this in our diagram. So we can say that the authorized person were further divided in two categories. Okay, one as authorized money changers, and second as authorized dealers. Okay, so the authorized person are further divided in two categories. One is the authorized money changers and second is the authorized dealers. Now let us understand what do we mean by the term authorized dealer. Authorized dealers. Now let us understand what is authorized dealers. So the first point states that banks and selected entities licensed by RBI to undertake forex transactions are called authorized dealers. So authorized dealers are nothing but they are licensed entities or banks, okay, which are licensed by the RBI to carry out foreign exchange transactions. Second point, it is that they are permitted to undertake all categories of transaction, pertaining to, now this is very important, pertaining to both current account as well as capital account of balance of payment. Okay. Next point, it states that the authorized dealers is required to comply with the directions and instruction of RBI. So it's complied with all your instructions and direction of RBI. So such instructions, when followed by the authorized dealers, they are known as the exchange control regulation. So any instruction or direction which are followed by the authorized dealer, which are given by RBI, it is known as the exchange control regulation. Now, with regards to operational aspect, okay, which deals with foreign transaction, and which consists of charging of commission, methods of quotation rate, quotation of rates, etc. Okay. For this, the authorized dealers will have to comply with all the directions and information and instruction according to the rules of Foreign Exchange Dealers Association of India. Okay, and it is also known as FEDAI, FEDAI. Okay, so now this we can inculcate in a structure that authorized dealers not only have to follow the rules and regulation of RBI, but along with that it also has to follow the rules of the Foreign Exchange Dealers Association of India. So that rule also has to be followed by the authorized dealers. Okay, so now the last what we need to understand is the authorized money changes. Now let us understand what is authorized money changes. Now the authorized money changes are basically, in simple terms, they are licensed entity permitted to provide facilities for encashment of foreign currencies for travel related instruments, okay, such as like the foreign currency notes and the traveler's checks. So in order to note it down, we can say the okay, the authorized money changes Okay, they are licensed entities, okay, who have been permitted to provide facilities. Okay, they can provide facilities for encashment of foreign currency for travel related instrument such as foreign currency notes and the traveler's check. Now, license to operate as money changers are only provided mostly to the hotels and the travel agency. So we can note down that as the authorized money changers or the license to operate as authorized money changers is normally provided to hotels, okay, travel agency. So anything related to travel, basically when you're going for travel related work. So hotels, travel agency, etc. Okay, they are those entities to which license of authorized money changers can be provided. Now, authorized money changers are classified as two parts. Okay, there are two classifications of authorized money changers. So they are sub-classified as number one is full-fledged authorized money changers, and second, restricted money changers. Okay, so in our diagram we can finish up the diagram stating that authorized money changers are subdivided into two parts. One as full-fledged money changers and second is the restricted money changer. Now, what do you mean by full-fledged and restricted money changers? So let us understand that. So let us understand first what is full-fledged money changer. So full-fledged money changers are basically permitted. They are basically permitted to undertake both purchase and sale of transaction with the public. Example, you can have the travel agency. So the travel agency basically can purchase and sell foreign exchange transaction with the public. However, that is known as the full-fledged. So full-fledged means you can buy and sell, okay, simultaneously. However, restricted. Now restricted money changers are permitted to undertake only purchase of foreign currency. Example, we can say 5-star hotels. So 5-star hotels, they are basically restricted money changers where they are only permitted to purchase or take foreign currency from their public. Okay, so with this, basically This is a basic. So this is the basic structure of Indian foreign exchange market. So the FEMA, along with the central bank, basically gave full powers to the RBI to look after and administer and control the foreign exchange market. But RBI cannot directly meet with individuals, so it gave license to authorized person. Okay, which are of two types. One is the authorized money changers, and the other is the authorized dealer. Authorized dealers are basically banks and private entities. They have to follow the rules of the RBI and FDI. Okay, authorized money changers are again, they are license holders, license entities basically. Okay, relating to travel. So there are two types of authorized money changers. One is the full-fledged and the second one is the restricted.
Okay, now to revise or the sum it up the entire thing. Okay, this was the same the structure that we had drawn earlier. So just let us have a small revision of that. So Foreign Exchange Management Act and the central government collectively had given RBI the power and the authority and the responsibility to look after the Indian foreign exchange market. However, RBI could not individually meet the end user, those are the customers. So it had given license to authorized person, which were of two types, which are authorized money changers and authorized dealers. Now, authorized dealers have to abide with the rules of the RBI and FDI. Okay, that is FEDAI, that is the Foreign Exchange Dealers Association of India, when dealing in foreign exchange. Now, authorized money changers were basically travel agents, anything related to travel, currency related to travel. Okay, they were of two types. One was the full-fledged and the second one was restricted. Full-fledged reflected to the authorized money changers which could buy and sell simultaneously. However, restricted were only allowed to purchase foreign exchange transaction. So this basically sums up the entire structure of Indian foreign exchange market in India. Okay, now the next topic that we need to learn is the dealing room operations. Now, what is basically a dealing room operation? Forex market operations are essentially transacted through bank's dealing room. So it is the bank's dealing room from where your forex market operates. A relatively small proportion of these transactions actually finances cross-border purchase of goods and services. Instead, it is the investors seeking the highest return on their funds by investing around the globe that are known to generate most of the currency trading. The cross-border capital movement have accelerated since the 80s, offering unparalleled personal and financial freedom to make money as well as lose it in no time. So foreign exchange market, completely fluctuating market. So not only it helps you to make money, but it can also eradicate your entire wealth in no time. Now they said that the bank's dealing room basically is the place where your foreign exchange operation takes place. It also said that the finance or the transactions which are carried cross-border ways for goods and services is very minimal, but it is basically the investor that seeks highest return on their fund by investing around the globe and making the most of the currency trading. Now let us examine how dealing rooms operate to facilitate trading in foreign currencies or foreign exchange of currencies. Now, a dealing room, also known as the trading room, it serves two types of businesses. One, trading and arbitrage, a business of investment bank and brokers referred to as the sell side. And second, portfolio management, a business of asset management companies and institutional investors referred to as the buy side. So a dealing room is basically a two-way business takes place where you have the sell side and the buy side. The sell side comprises of trading and arbitrage, and buy side is basically of portfolio management. Now, the foreign exchange dealing room operation comprises functions of a service branch to meet the needs of other branches or divisions to buy or sell foreign currency. So, a dealing room operation, it acts as a profit center for the bank or financial institution, and a dealer has to maintain two positions: one, the funds position, and second, the currency position. Now, let us understand what do you mean by a dealing room. A dealing room is a centralized establishment, usually of a commercial bank, which is willing to make or offer a two-way dealing price for different currency at all times, even when they may not wish to deal, but all during the prescribed business hour. So it is nothing but a centralized unit of a commercial bank which is ready to buy and sell different currency at all time, but under the prescribed business hour. Banks trading account sorry Banks trading actively in the forex market and offering variety of products usually segregate their dealing room functions into two or three offices. One, known as the front office, that undertakes the actual dealing or trading operation in the interbank market. Second, known as the mid office, it if established. Now this is an optional. Some commercial bank they do have mid office, some they don't have. So if established, it is entrusted with the job of risk management and accounting policies, MIS, that is marketing information system, market research, etc. And third, the back office, which is made accountable for settlement of transaction, reconciliation, and accounting. So your dealing room is basically divided into three offices. The front office, which takes the actual dealing, a place where actual dealing and trading takes place. Mid office is basically related to risk management and research work, and back office is basically for your settlement of transaction, your reconciliation, and your accounting job. Now let us understand your foreign currency dealing room setup. Now, as we already learned earlier that it is the commercial bank's branch which usually have a dealing room. A dealing room has basically three offices: the front office, the mid office, and the back office. Okay, the exporters, the importers, individual, corporate, anyone, they have two-way transaction available where they can buy and sell. Okay, so the dealing room again has three offices: the front office, which actually deals with the trading operation of the interbank market; the mid office, okay, which is interested with the job of risk management and accounting policies and market research work; and back office, which is made accountable for settlement of transaction, reconciliation, and accounting. The dealing room operates with the global currency market and the domestic interbank forex market, where it buys and sells simultaneously. Okay, so this is the basic setup of your dealing room dealing in foreign currency. Okay, now let us try to understand the various offices in detail under the heading of dealing room. The very first office was the front office. So let us now try to understand what does front office mean in detail. Now, the front office is the very hub of dealing activities. It is also known as the nerve center from where dealers trade in the forex market. A large dealing room will be controlled by a chief dealer who may not actually undertake dealing activities by himself. He would usually be responsible to implement the management policies. The chief dealer leads morning discussion with his junior dealers on forecast and strategies for the day before the dealing begins. It is only individuals having quick reflexes and steel nerves that are chosen and trained as dealers to operate from the dealing room. So you need a lot of experience, a lot of gut feelings, a very good, very quick reflexes in order to become a dealer, because your decisions can prove very vital, and you don't have, you have to be very quick, but you still have to be dynamic in your thinking process. Only then you can become a very good dealer and can be operated from the dealing room. Now the front office are provided with many supporting gadgets, that is the real-time financial data providers such as the router monitor service, Bridge, Bloomberg, which provides a real-time bid and offer quotation of contributing banks, other market information that has a bearing on currency movement. So at present the front office have been given with a lot of IT or the informational technology, where you have services like the router monitor service, Bloomberg, which gives you real-time bid and offer quotations. In India, interbank market deals are done on telephone. The dealers maintain a deal slips indicating the name of the broker, if any, the counterparty bank, currency, amount, time, rate and the due date under his signature as soon as the deal is struck, and it is passed on to the back office for further processing. Now let us understand in detail what is a mid office. Now big dealing rooms have of late created another segment in the dealing rooms, calling it the mid office, and entrusted it with the responsibility of controlling functions, drafting management policies, and management information system that generates daily and weekly reports for management use. Another key function that the mid office undertakes is to constantly monitor, analyze, and interpret macroeconomic indicators that have an impact on exchange rate movement. So it is basically a risk management unit of the dealing room. The dealing room functions essentially with three objectives. One, to give the best possible service to customers. Second, to manage the bank's position so that inventory in each foreign currency is kept at the desired level. And third, to produce profit for the bank while accomplishing the first two objectives. Now these are the basic or essential function of dealing room. The mid office therefore represents the risk management hub of all dealing operation. It provides a constant flow of market information to the dealer. So mid office is basically related to all the information, all the risk management, all the policies. Okay, it gives a constant flow of information to its dealers. And the third, we have the back office. So let us now try to understand what is back office in detail. Striking a deal with a counterparty from a dealing room to buy and sell a certain currency is not the end of forex transaction. There is a lot more to be done after that. Take care of processing deal, maintaining mirror accounts for nostro accounts reconciliation, recording of utilization of forward contracts by customers, recovering overdue interest, preparing returns to be submitted to RBI, etc. are the various other jobs other than settling of account, revaluation, reconciliation of account that the back office has to do. It represents the administrative hub of all dealing operations. So these were the various offices, which are present in a dealing room. Now let us understand the dealing room transaction. All transactions in the dealing room can be classified as either number one, merchant transactions, they are entered into with customers of the bank, and second, the interbank transaction undertaken with other banks or institution. So there are two types of transaction, okay, which takes place in dealing room. One is with the customer of the bank, and the second is with the other banks and institution. So now let us try to understand in detail what is merchant transaction and interbank transaction with the help of the following distinguish. Okay, on the left side we will note down the merchant transaction, and on the right side we will note down the interbank transaction. Now, the very first point, merchant transaction, they actually represent the transaction between the bank and its customer. So we can write it as it represents transaction between the banks and its customers, whereas the interbank transaction represents the transaction between the bank and other banks and institutions. So here we'll note it down as it represents transactions between the banks and other banks and institution. That's the first point. Second, they are transactions which are initiated by the customers. Okay, merchant transactions are transactions which are initiated by the customers. So we write it, these are transactions initiated by the customers, whereas interbank transactions are transactions initiated by the bank to cover merchant deeds or acquire a speculative position. So we'll note down that as, okay, they are transactions are initiated by the bank to cover merchant deeds or acquire speculative position. Third point under merchant transaction is that here the deeds can be customized, whereas in interbank transaction the deeds are standardized, they are fixed, you cannot make changes there. But in merchant transaction, yes, changes can be made. So here we can write it as, in merchant transaction we have customized deeds. However, in interbank transaction there are standardized deeds. You cannot make any changes in interbank transaction deed. The fourth point states that in merchant transaction brokers are not involved. However, in interbank transaction there may or may not be brokers, but in merchant transaction there are no brokers allowed. So we can write it as, it does not or do not involves brokers, but an interbank may or may not involve broker. Okay. Now the fifth point states that the merchant transactions, they are actually conducted at merchant rate, which are quoted to the nearest 0.0025 paise. Okay, so let me first note down and then I'll explain you. So we can write this as they are conducted at merchant rates which are quoted to the nearest 0.0025 paise. Okay, so under merchant transactions, the merchant rates are quoted to the nearest 0.0025 paise. Now same thing under interbank transactions, we can write it as they are conducted at interbank rates which are quoted to the nearest 0.0005 paise. The sixth point of the distinguished states that under merchant transactions, the transactions are classified as per rate. So I'll write it as transactions are classified as per rate. Example में we can have telegraphic transfer, we can have bills, we can have travelers check, we can also have currency banknotes. Whereas an interbank transaction, the transactions are classified in terms of settlement. In terms of settlement, example, we have cash settlement, we can have spot settlement, or we can even have forward settlement. The last distinct between merchant transaction to interbank transaction is that merchant transaction, they represent the retail segment of the market, and they are governed by the exchange control regulation of RBI. So we can write it as it represents the retail segment of the market and are governed by the exchange control regulation of RBI. In case of interbank transaction, it represents the wholesale segment of the market and are subjected to RBI rules and regulation and guidelines of FEDAI, that is nothing but the Foreign Exchange Dealers Association of India. Okay, so this was the distinct point between merchant transaction and interbank transaction. So under this topic, we first learned what is a dealing room transaction. Then we came across what is dealing room. Under dealing room, there are three offices. First was the front office, then was the back office, and the mid office. Then we learned about the various transactions which were there, which is the merchant transaction and the interbank transaction. With this, the concept of dealing room transaction gets done. Okay, now let us understand what are the various foreign currency accounts present. Okay, the very first foreign currency account which is present known as the Nostro account. Now, the Nostro account is an account maintained by a bank in India with a bank abroad. For example, SBI may maintain an account with Citibank New York or with HSBC in London for dollar operation and euro operation respectively. So Nostro account is basically, it is maintained by an Indian bank with a bank abroad. While corresponding with Citi or HSBC, SBI would refer its account with the former two as the Nostro, meaning our account with you. That's the basic meaning of Nostro. All foreign exchange transactions are routed through Nostro account. The next foreign currency account is known as the Vostro account. A foreign bank may open a rupee account with an Indian bank. It is exactly the vice versa of Nostro account. While corresponding with the foreign bank maintaining an account with it, the Indian bank would refer to the account as Vostro account, meaning your account with us. Bank of Bahrain, for example, Bank of Bahrain and Kuwait may open an account with SBI of India and draw drafts on the account. On presentation of drafts, the Indian bank would pay to the debit of the foreign bank's account with it. For exchange control purposes, such accounts are known as non-resident bank account. Okay, now the next topic that we need to learn is the Foreign Exchange Dealers Association of India. The abbreviation is FEDAI. Okay. So let us see what does Foreign Exchange Dealers Association of India mean. Now, the Foreign Exchange Dealers Association of India is an association of banks that specializes in the foreign exchange market in India. These institutions are also called the Authorized Dealers or ADS. Created in 1958, the body regulates the rules that determines commissions and charges that are attached to the interbank foreign exchange business. Foreign Exchange Dealers Association of India is incorporated under Section 25 of the Companies Act 1956. Its major activities include framing of rules governing the conduct of interbank foreign exchange business among banks, vice versa public, and license with the RBI for reforms and development of forex market. So the main activity which the Foreign Exchange Dealers Association of India deals is basically framing of all the rules governing the interbank foreign exchange, okay, with the public and banks and with the RBI for reforms of development of forex market. The Foreign Exchange Dealers Association of India determines many of the rules that overlook the day-to-day forex transaction in India. Now, as we had discussed earlier also in structure of the Indian foreign exchange market, authorized dealer has to abide with the rules of both these institutions. Okay, so the authorized dealers not only have to go through the rules and regulation of RBI, but it has to also go through the rules of the Foreign Exchange Dealers Association of India. In addition to rule setting, the Foreign Exchange Dealers Association of India assist member banks by acting as an advisor and assist with the training of personnel and accrediting the foreign exchange brokers. Now let us learn who are the members of Foreign Exchange Dealers Association of India. Number 1, the public and private sector banks. Second, the foreign banks. Third, the cooperative banks. Next, the financial institutions such as the Exim Bank, IDBI, IFCI and SIDBI, and others such as Thomas Cook Limited. As of December 2017, the Foreign Exchange Dealers Association of India member banks spanned the public sector, private sector, foreign banks and cooperative banks and the financial institution, among others. The total count was 102. Now, let us see what are the various functions of the Foreign Exchange Dealers Association of India. Presently, their main functions are as follows. Number 1, frame guidelines and rules for foreign exchange business. Second, training of bank personnel in the areas of foreign exchange business. Third, accreditations of foreign exchange brokers and periodic review of their operation. Next, they also provide and advise the RBI regarding licensing of new brokers. Next, advising or assisting the member banks in settling issues or matters in their dealing. So the first part of their function, the first part of their main function is that it provides and frames the guidelines and rule of foreign exchange business. It gives training to bank personnel. It accredits the foreign exchange brokers. It advises the RBI regarding licensing of new brokers, and it assists or advises the member banking settling the issues. The next set of functions are that they provide a standardized dispute settlement process for all market participants. So there is a fixed way of settling all the various disruption in the market. Next, they represent member banks in discussion with government or the RBI or the other bodies, and provide a common platform for the authorized dealers to interact with the government and the RBI. Next is announcement of daily and periodical rates to the member banks. So the Foreign Exchange Dealers Association of India, on daily basis they keep announcing and they keep publishing various periodical rates to their member bank. Next is that at the end of each calendar month they provide a schedule of forward rate to be used by the authorized dealers for reevaluating foreign currency denominated assets and liabilities. The next set of functions of Foreign Exchange Dealers Association of India is that announcement of spot date at the start of each trading day to ensure uniformity in settlement between different market participants. Next, to circulate guidelines for quotation of rates, charging of commission, etc. by authorized dealers to their customers and by brokers for interbank transaction. So with this, we studied through what is Foreign Exchange Dealers Association of India, who are the members, and what are the various functions of Foreign Exchange Dealers Association of India. With this particular topic comes to an end. Okay, now the next topic that we need to learn is the types of foreign exchange transaction. Now the very first type of foreign exchange transaction is called as the spot rate. The term spot exchange refers to the class of foreign exchange transaction which requires the immediate delivery or exchange of currency on the spot. It reflects what one currency is worth in terms of another currency within 2 business days from the trade date, which is the normal settlement period for a spot transaction. So basically spot transaction takes place within, it's basically T plus 2, meaning the date of trade plus 2 more days. Okay. In practice, the settlement takes within 2 days in most of the market. For example, if a wholesaler company wants immediate delivery of orange juice in April, then it will pay the spot price to the seller and have the orange juices delivered within 2 days. Okay, we take another example. Let's say we have Mr. X from India and Mr. Y from USA. Mr. X wants to import goods from USA to India. The cost of it is $1,000. The current rate which is prevailing in the market is $1 is equal to rupees 70. Therefore, Mr. X will need to pay, the total amount in INR will be 70 into 1000, which is rupees 70,000. So Mr. X will have to pay 70,000 to USA, but before that he'll have to convert the rupees 70,000 into dollars and pay in dollars. This is known as the spot exchange rate. The second type of foreign exchange transaction is called as the future contract. Now, a future contract is a legal agreement to buy or sell a particular commodity asset or security at a predetermined price at a specified time in the future. In a very layman term, future contract is an agreement between two parties where both the parties agree to buy or sell a particular asset of certain quantity and at a predetermined price at a specified date in future. They have negotiated today. So futures can be traded only on an organized exchange, and they are traded competitively. Future contracts can be bought and sold on recognized stock exchange like NSE, BSE or commodity exchange. Okay, let us take an example. To illustrate, let us take an example of an onion farmer. Okay, let's say that onion farmer has 2 acres of land. In 2 acres of his land, he decided to grow onions. Usually, every year he produces 5 tons of onion. However, he is worried if the season is terrible and the supply of onion fall, then he might need to bear the losses. So now here comes the role of future contract. Now let us see how future contract can come into picture. The farmer could either grow the onion and then sell it for whatever the price it is there in the market when he harvests it, or he could fix a price now by selling a future contract. This will obligate the farmer to sell 5 tons of onion after the harvest for a fixed price. By fixing the price now, the farmer is eliminating the risk of falling onion prices in future. However, he needs to find someone who is ready for such type of an agreement. So let's say a local hotel owner decides instead of buying onion from the market, if he can directly buy it from the farmer, the cost would be lesser. Now in that case, both can go through an agreement with specific quantity and certain date of expiry, let's say 3 months. The market price of onion at that time could be very different from the current price. It can be risky for both under different circumstances. So if the price of onion goes up in future, hotel owner needs to pay fixed amount as per contract, and this will benefit him. However, on the contrary, the farmer can get benefited if the prices stood low from the current market price. So with this, the future contracts comes to an end, and this is how the future contract usually works. The next type of contract is the forward contract. The forward transaction is an agreement between two parties requiring the delivery at some specified future date of a specified amount of foreign currency by one of the parties against payment in domestic currency, be the other party at the price agreed upon in the contract. Now, in simple terms, it is an agreement between two parties requiring the delivery at certain specified future date of a specified amount of foreign currency at a price agreed upon in the contract. So now this is similar to your future contract. However, here, the rates are decided as per the forward market rates. Okay, so here again, the delivery will be made at present. However, the payment will be now made in future at some specified date at a specified rate. Here the payment and receipts are made in future and the delivery of goods and services are in present. Whereas in future contract, the delivery and payment both are in future. The rate of exchange applicable to the forward contract is called the forward exchange rate, and the market for forward transaction is known as the forward market. Now, with reference to its relationship with the spot rate, forward exchange rates can be at a premium or at a discount. To find out if the forward exchange rate is at premium or at discount, we have to compare the spot rate and the forward rate. A foreign currency is said to be at a premium, whereas forward rate is higher than the spot rate. A foreign currency is said to be at a discount when its spot rate is higher than the forward rate. Now, these two statements can be expressed as forward. When the forward rate is more than the spot rate, then the forward rate of exchange currency is called at a premium. However, when the spot rate is greater than the forward rate, then the forward rate of foreign currency is at discount. So forward contract, okay, can be at a premium as well as discount. Now, the calculation of forward rate, premium or discount in annualized percentage form. So these are the now two formulas. Forward premium is equal to forward rate minus spot rate upon spot rate into 12 divided by n. N stands for the number of months you're going to forward it by, into 100. Discount is equal to spot rate minus forward rate upon spot rate into 12 divided by n into 100, where again n is nothing but the number of months for which forward contract has been made. So these are the two formulas by which you can find forward premium or forward discount. Now let us understand how we can use these formulas with an example. Okay, from the data given below, let us calculate forward premium or discount as it will be applicable in the case. So let's say we have an example on Indian per British pound. The spot rate is given as 78.0001. The 1 month forward rate is given as 78.4256 and 3 months forward rate is given as 77.8952. Now the very first rule, in order to find whether it is at a premium or a discount, we have to compare the spot rate and the forward rate. So let us first compare the spot rate, which is 78.001, with 1 month forward rate. Now when you compare it, we came to know that the forward rate is more than the spot rate. Now as per the rule, when your forward rate is more than your spot rate, then we will have a forward premium. Now how to calculate that? So we have to find 1 month premium. So 1 month premium is equal to forward rate, that was as per the formula, minus the spot rate upon spot rate into 12 divided by n. N was the number of months where you have the forward for, which is 1 month forward. So upon 1 into 100. By solving this, you will get the answer as 6.55%. So we can say that for 1 month forward, okay, so we can say that the annualized forward premium for 1 month is 6.55%. Now let us compare the spot rate with 3 months forward rate. Spot rate is 78.0001. However, the 3 months forward rate is 77.8952. Now here the spot rate is greater than the forward rate. So now here we will have forward discount. So in order to find 3 months discount, we use the formula spot rate minus forward rate upon spot rate into 12 divided by n. Here we have 3 months forward rate, so we take it as 3 into 100. When we solve, we get the answer as 0.54%. So the currency is at a discount, or we can say the currency is at an annualized forward discount for 0.54%. So with this, your contract or your forward contract topics comes to an end. Okay, the next type of transaction is the options. An option is a contract or financial instrument that gives the holder the right to sell or buy a given quantity of an asset at a specified price at a specified future date. An option to buy the underlying asset is known as the call option, and an option to sell the underlying asset is known as the put option. So now in option there are two types of transaction. One is called the call option and the other one is the put option. Buying or selling the underlying assets via the option is known as exercising the option. So we don't say we are buying or we are selling, we say we are exercising the option. The stated price paid is known as the stated price paid or received is known as the exercise or the striking price. So when we are paying a price or when you are receiving an amount, we don't say we are receiving, we say it is a striking price or an exercise. The buyer of the option is known as the long, and the seller of an option is known as the writer of the option or the short. So the buyer are called usually long and the sellers are called usually short. The price for the option is known as premium. There are two types of options available at present. With reference to the exercise characteristic, there are two types of options available. One is the American option and the second is the European option. The next type is called as the swap or the swap point. Commercial bank who conduct forward exchange business may resort to a swap operation to adjust their fund position. The term swap basically means simultaneous sale of spot currency for the forward purchase of same currency or purchase of spot for the forward sale of the same currency. The spot is swapped against forward. Operations consisting of a simultaneous sale or purchase of spot currency accompanied by a purchase or sale respectively of the same currency for forward delivery are technically known as swap or double deal, as the spot currency is swapped against forward. So here basically swap means what? A spot rate will be given to you, okay, and you are swapping that rate with the forward points. Okay, let us take an example. Okay, let's say the spot rate is given as $1 is equal to 60.20/60.70, where the first amount is called as the bid rate and the second is called as the ask rate. 1 month swap point is given to us at 30 and 40. Now if you look carefully, 30 and 40, the number is in ascending order. When the swap points are given in ascending order, we usually add those points to the spot rate, and with that we can get a forward rate. So our forward rate will now be, okay, it was 60.20. Because it is 30 to 40, it is ascending, we will add these swap points. So it will be 60.20 plus 30 points, so that becomes 60.50. Similarly, 60.70 plus 40 points, okay, when you add it, you will get it as 61.1. So your forward rate changes. Now let's take another example that the 2 month swap point is 40/30. Now if you look at the swap point, okay, from 40 it is becoming 30, so it is descending. The rule is if the swap points are in descending order, you subtract from the spot rate. So the new forward rate will now be 60.20 minus 0.40, so which will come to 59.80, and 60.70 minus 30 points, so you will get it as 60.40. So this is how swap point usually works. So your spot rate is getting swapped with the swap points and we are getting the new forward rate. The next type of The next type of transaction is the arbitrage. Now, arbitrage is the process of simultaneously buying and selling a financial instrument on different markets in order to make profit from an imbalance in price. An arbitrator would look for differences in price of the same financial instrument in different markets, buy the instrument on the market with the lower price, and simultaneously sell it on the other market which bids a higher price for the traded instrument. Now let us take an example. A classical example of arbitrage is the vintage clothing. A given set of old clothes might cost $50 at a thrift store or an auction. At a vintage boutique or online, a fashion conscious customer might pay $500 for the same clothes. A smart customer can spend $50 at their local thrift shop and then sell the same item online for $500. That's an example of arbitrage with $450 in profit. Now the exchange rates are an important form for arbitrage. Let's take an example. Let's say if the exchange rate in London is £1 is equal to $2, while the exchange rate in US is £1 is equal to $3. Then a smart customers can make a profit simply by converting the money from dollars to pound in London and then converting it back when they return to US. Okay, now with this, the topic based on various types of transaction comes to an end. Okay, now the next topic that we need to learn is the foreign exchange codes. Now, under foreign exchange codes, let us first try to understand the currency pairs and the rate of exchange. Every foreign exchange transaction is an exchange between a pair of currencies. Currency pairing are expressed as two ISO codes separated by a division symbol. Example, the Great Britain pound /USD. The first representing the base currency and the other the secondary currency or the quoted currency. So always remember, exchange rate code will always be given in two names or in pairs of currency. The first is called as the base currency and the other one is called as the quoted currency. The rate of exchange is simply the price of one currency in terms of another. The base currency is the one you are buying or selling. For example, Great Britain pound to USD is equal to 1.5545. It denotes that 1 unit of sterling pound, that is the base currency, okay, that is the base currency, can be exchanged for 1.5545 USD, that is the secondary currency or the quoted currency. Okay, now the common currency symbol. Okay, there is a list of common currency symbols. I just want you to go through them and thereafter we can start ahead with the lecture. Okay, now let us try to figure out how the exchange rates are quoted and in what format. Okay, now take an example of USD to INR is equal to 46.8000 /46.9000. Now always the exchange rate will be quoted in two rates. One is known as the bid rate and the other one is known as the ask rate. The above represents the amount of currency in denominator. Here it is the Indian rupees to be paid for each unit of currency in numerator, that is the USD. In this case, USD is the base currency and INR is the secondary or quoted currency. So to buy 1 unit of USD, you will have to pay this much of amount of INR. Now the quotation is always in double numbers with minor difference between the two. So if you can see, there's minor difference between the two. The first number is called the bid rate and the second is called as the ask rate. Always remember, the bid rate will always be lower than the ask rate. Now let us understand what do you mean by direct and indirect quotes. Direct quote. Now first we'll try to understand what is direct quote. Direct quotes gives the units of currency of domestic country per unit of a foreign currency. The price of foreign currency is quoted in terms of home currency. Here the domestic currency is quoted currency. Example, USD to INR. Here 1 unit of USD will be equal to 45.30 rupees. So this is known as the direct quote. Okay, and here India is the country in which it is a direct quote. Now the reciprocal of this. So we are assuming, okay, in order to solve this, we have to think we are from India. Okay, so in order to purchase USD, 1 unit of USD will cost us 45.30 rupees. So here India is a direct quote. So this is a direct quote for India. Now the exact opposite version of this. So in order to find out that how much 1 rupee will give you, okay, how much dollars can 1 rupee be purchased, that is known as the indirect quote. So indirect quote basically gives the unit of currency of foreign country per unit of domestic currency. Here the price of home currency is quoted in terms of foreign currency. The foreign currency is the quoted currency. Example, Indian rupees to USD is equal to $0.0220. So here 1 unit of rupees, okay, can be used to purchase, or the other way if you say, here 1 rupee, in order to purchase 1 rupee, you will have to pay $0.0220. Here India or the Indian rupee becomes the base currency and the quoted currency becomes USD. Okay, now let us try to understand this concept of direct and indirect quote in a better way with the following examples.
Okay, now let us learn in detail with the help of this practical sum what is direct quote and what is indirect quote. Okay, now there's this question given here: identify the names of respective countries where the following is a direct quote. So there are some quotes given to you, so we have to mention country in which this is a direct quote, and then for each find the indirect quote in that country, and then we even have to find the indirect quote. Now we take the very first example. It is given as rupees 75.31 is equal to 1 Great Britain pound. Now we need to find in which country is this a direct quote. Now to remember this in very simple term, always try to find the base currency. Base currency will be the one which will be given in a single unit. Now in this particular question, the first problem, 1 unit of Great Britain pound has been given to us. So this is known as your base currency. So the currency opposite to the base currency will be the country in which it is a direct quote. So now in the first example, 1 Great Britain pound is equal to 75.31 rupees will be a direct quote for India. Now in order to find the indirect quote, the direct quote value, okay, the reciprocal of direct quote value will give you the indirect quote. So in order to get the indirect quote, okay, the formula what we'll be using will be 1 divided by 75.31. So let's see how much do we get that. So 1 divided by 75.31 is equal to 0.0133. Okay, so now the indirect quote states that 1 rupee is equal to 0.0133 33 Great Britain pound. So that was that first example where we noted down first the direct quote and thereafter we found the indirect quote. Now same way in a second example, 1 USD is equal to rupees 48.30. Now again, first we try to find the base currency. The base currency is the one which is given in one single unit. So here in this case, USD is the base currency. So the opposite to that, whatever currency will be given, that currency or that country will be known as the direct quote country. So in this case again, India will be the country in which it is a direct quote. Now again, in order to find the indirect quote, we will find the reciprocal of direct quote. So the direct quote was given as 48.30. So the indirect quote will be 1 divided by 48.30, which comes to 0.0207. So again, in this case it will become 1 rupee is equal to 0.0207 USD. I hope you all have understood this part. So now we jump to the third one. 1 rupee is equal to 2.1 baht, or we can even call it a Thai baht or the Thailand baht. So again, now in this, the base currency, we need to first find the base currency. 1 unit of rupees is given, so here India becomes the base currency, or rupees becomes the base currency. So country in which it is a direct quote will be baht, which is Thailand. Now in order to find the indirect quote, okay, so we'll find the reciprocal of the direct quote. So it will be 1 divided by 2.1, which comes up to 0.4762. So now here 1 baht will be equal to 0.4762 rupees. Okay, now we jump to the next one. 1 Omani Riyal is equal to rupees 126.26. Again, first we need to find the base currency. So Omani Riyal is your base currency. So the country or the currency opposite to that is resembles of India. So the direct quote in this case is again India. In order to find the inverse or the indirect quote, we'll find the reciprocal of direct quote, that will be 1 divided by 126.26, which comes to 0.0080. So here 1 rupee will be equal to 0.0080 Omani Riyal. We jumped on to the fifth example. 1 Great Britain pound is equal to $0.639. Again, base currency is Great Britain pound, so the opposite to that is dollars. Dollar represent USA. In order to find the indirect quote, it will be the reciprocal, so we'll do 1 divided by 0.639, which comes up to 1.5650. So here $1 will be equal to 1.5650 Great Britain pound. Okay, so now we jump to the next. Okay, now here again there are list of 9 questions or examples given to you all. Okay, I want you all to start solving this. I'll give you all a couple of minutes, okay, to practice this, and thereafter we'll discuss the answers. Okay, I hope you all have solved it. So now we will check the answer by solving it here. Okay, now the first example, 1 USD is equal to 1.1650 Canadian dollar. Here base currency is dollar, so the country in which it is a direct quote will become Canada. So the indirect quote in this particular sum will be the reciprocal of direct quote, that will be 1 divided by 1.1650, which comes up to 0.8584. So here 1 Canadian dollar is equal to 0.8584 USD. The next, 1 euro is equal to 1.2596 USD. Euro is the base currency, so your country in which it is a direct quote will become USA. In order to find the indirect quote, it will be 1 divided by 1.2596. So here it is 0.7939. So 1 USD is equal to 0.7939 euro. The next, 1 USD is equal to rupees 45.3716. Here the base currency is USD, therefore the direct quote will be resembling India. In order to find the indirect quote, it will be 1 divided by 45.3716, which comes up to 0.0220. So 1 rupee is equal to 0.0220 USD. The next, 1 Great Britain pound is equal to rupees 78.79. The base currency is Great Britain pound, so the country in which it is a direct quote is India. In order to find the indirect quote, we'll again find the reciprocal, that is 1 divided by 78.79, which is 0.0127. So here again 1 rupee is equal to 0.0127 Great Britain pound. Okay, I hope all these answers are correct as the way you all have solved it. Okay, now the fifth, 1 USD is equal to rupees 53.67. Base currency is USD, so the country in which it is a direct quote will again be India. Now in order to find the indirect quote, okay, we'll find the reciprocal, 1 divided by 53.67, so it comes to 0.0186 USD. The sixth one is 1 Omani Riyal is equal to rupees 135. Again, Omani Riyal is the base currency. Okay, the opposite to that is Indian rupees, so the country in which it is a direct quote is again India. Here again 1 rupee will be equal to 1 divided by 135, which is 0.0074 Omani Riyal. The next, we have 1 Great Britain pound is equal to 0.731 dollars. Again here the base currency is Great Britain pound, opposite to that is dollars, so the country in which it is a direct quote is USA. Now to find the indirect quote, okay, we'll find the reciprocal, that is 1 divided by 0.731, so that comes to 1.3681. So here again $1 will be equal to 1.3681 Great Britain pound. Okay, now the next, 1 Singapore dollar is equal to rupees 52.56. Here the base currency is in Singapore, so the direct quote is in again India. Now in order to find the indirect quote, it will be again reciprocal, that is 1 divided by 52.56, which is 0.0190. So here 1 rupee is equal to 0.0190 Singapore dollar. last 1 Thai baht is equal to rupees 2.1. Again, your base currency is Thai baht. Currency opposite to that is the INR or the Indian rupees. So the country in which it is a direct quote is India. Okay, and the indirect quote becomes 1 divided by 2.1, that is 0.0476. So 1 rupee is equal to 0.0476 Thai baht. Okay, so with this, I guess you all have understood what is direct quote, country in which the specific amount is a direct quote, and how to get the value of indirect quote. Now these values which are given are just for example point of view, they have nothing to do with the market. Okay, so chalo, with this the topic related to direct and indirect quote gets done.
Now let us understand what do you mean by bid and ask rate. First, the bid rate. Price at which the forex dealer is willing to buy a unit of the base currency is known as the bid rate. As a customer, this will be the price at which you will sell the currency. Ask rate is the opposite of that. It is the price at which the forex dealer is willing to sell a unit of the base currency. As a customer, this will be the price at which the currency is offered to you or at which you can buy. Example, USD to INR is given as 72.01 / 72.98. Here, the first amount is called as the bid rate. It is the rate at which the forex dealer is willing to buy. It means from our point of view, this is the rate at which we can sell the currency. So when you're going to sell, you are going to sell it at 72.01, but when you need to buy, okay, that's called the ask rate. It is the rate at which the forex dealer is willing to sell. So from our perspective, from our point of view, this is the rate at which you will be able to buy. Always remember, the buying rate will always be more than the selling rate. The next thing what we need to understand is known as spread. Now what is spread? As stated earlier, there is always a positive difference between the ask rate and bid rate. Why? Because ask rate will always be higher than the bid rate. The difference is called the spread, and it is the profit margin that the dealer earns by the trade. Symbolically, spread is equal to nothing but ask rate minus bid rate. And if you need to find the percentage spread, it is equal to, okay, ask rate minus bid rate upon ask rate into 100.
So with this, we can conclude that the part 1 of module 3 comes to an end. But before ending this video lecture, we'll again do one small exercise based on MCQs. So let us see what questions are available under module 3 part 1. The first question states that the forex market operations are essentially transacted through banks, dash rooms. Options are operating, working, dealing and forex. The second MCQ states that dash undertakes the actual dealing or trading operations in the interbank market. The options are front office, mid office, back office and corporate office. The third one is in India, interbank market deals are done on the dash, that's telephone, email, SMS or fax. Read the question once, think what might be probably the right answers. I'll give you a couple of minutes and thereafter we will discuss the answers. So I'll give you a couple of minutes, think and then we will discuss. Okay, now let us check what might be the correct answers for the MCQs which are given. Number one, the forex market operations are essentially transacted through banks dash room. The correct answer for that is dealing rooms. Next, dash undertakes the actual dealing or trading operation in the interbank market. The answer is front office. In India, interbank market deals are done on the dash, that's telephone. I hope everyone must have got those three answers right. We'll move to the next set of MCQs. The fourth one states that the difference between the ask rate and bid rate is called dash. Options are spread, call rate, put rate, and margin. The next one states that dash is the profit margin that the dealer earns by trade. Options are again spread, call rate, put rate, and offer rate. And the sixth one, dash gives the unit of currency of domestic country per unit of a foreign currency. The options are opposite quotes, straight quotes, direct quotes, and indirect quotes. Again, I'll give you a couple of minutes, think what might be the correct answer, and then we will discuss the answers. Okay, let us see what are the answers for the remaining three MCQs. Number one, difference between ask rate and bid rate is called the spread. Dash is the profit margin that the dealer earned by trade. It is again spread. And last, dash gives the unit of currency of domestic country per unit of foreign currency. That's direct quotes. I hope everyone should have got these answers right. So with this, we can conclude that the first part of the third module comes to an end.